I'm going to make a start this time, so precious. I'm going to put a hooter on my phone. Okay, so there's no requirement. We're going to put it, I'll say 8, but it might be 9. When the hooter goes, we'll round up in 30 seconds. It's a tag team, because there's 3 of us. It's sportsmanship, you've got to do team. Unless you're endurance athlete, in which case it's a bit weird. The hooter is on.
Okay. I'm Benjamin. I'm Darsen's secretary for Gloucester. The reason I'm here is because there's a strand of our Darsen division for sports, and it's my job to be the champion sponsor for that particular strand. A brief bit, because these two know much more than I do about sport. We did a listing exercise, as most dioceses do, before we set the vision. We contacted 6,000 people. We had feedback from 6,000 people in the diocese, which is about 1% of the population of our diocese. And the number one response about what the church can do to be better engaged was sport. Sadly, because the church's process then got into digesting that feedback, it ends up as half of one of the priorities. However, it is probably the most effective and energetic of our priorities, and I think it has the most scope for transformation in our diocese of all the different areas that we're looking at. The baptism, discipleship, prayer, spirituality. I'd say sport has got the most traction at the moment. The question which I would ask myself is, why should there be a Darsen strategy if it's not something that parishes do? I think there's a very compelling argument that actually this should be led by an organisation like the Board of Finance that employs me. Because we don't want sport to simply be an activity that some churches do, that sort of nice bit of outreach to kind of then try and get people in on Sunday morning. It needs a genuine transformation. It's to grow new churches, and I think that's our fundamental aspiration, is to grow new churches around sport in the Diocese of Gloucester that are authentic worship communities built out of sport. And I think we have the capacity to do that. But in order to do that, we need to build vocations programs. We need to understand what plant these churches are going to need, because they can't use the beautiful medieval churches that populate our diocese in great number. We also need to play about how they become sustainable. I think one of the things that most disappoints me on behalf of the church is the amount of sports and youth leaders that are dependent on 3 years funding. And those awkward questions that come along at the end of it. We have these violently passionate people about Christ and sport, and yet we expect them to bounce from one funding stream to another funding stream, and that's no way to live and bring up a family and be sustainable personally. My own interest as the Darsen secretary, I think what I can do is I can help open doors. I both into the bishop staff team and to the wider diocese. I come possibly after the bishop, the second most network person in the diocese in terms of knowing everywhere and what's going on, and spotting the opportunities, which I think are phenomenal. I mean, every sports centre we've gone along to see if we could get involved is almost near closure. That includes mine. I live in Fairford, a small market town, and the secondary school is currently running it, and they're going to close it next year. And this is a pattern everywhere, whether that's urban estates in West Cheltenham, whether that's market towns like Fairford, whether it's villages, suburbs, they're all teetering on the edge. So there's a real opportunity. And a new housing development, a strand in our Darsen strategy, I'm sure probably in yours because we don't know everywhere. In those new development plans, there's always a sports centre, and no one has any idea how to run it. And therefore I think we have the opportunity to step in those conversations with developers and planners to say there's an opportunity for us. So we're very aspirational, I think, it's fair to say.
Yeah.
And these two will tell you how we do it.
Well, go big or go home. That's why it's got Benjamin's here. So you get an opposite size. So it's about influence. Whole Darsen's approach is part of our strategy. You get the people who actually are the really important people, and you recognise that actually as a team, now we can do something big as Darsen. Just, you know, it is a Darsen approach. It isn't just a church or two. We are about a sustainable sports ministry. We're about every deanery being involved strategically. We're about a half of every benefice doing some kind of buy-in or delivery. And we're saying we're seeking to see 15% more children and young people connecting and being discipled through their local churches. That is our vision. Sports mission and ministry is really massive. So if you're sat here with a Darsen's hat on, we've gone. It's all of value, but what is our focus? So I wonder what your focus is. Ours is children and young people, the 95% children and young people who are not in church. Our focus is the local mission through sport, what's happening in your local park, your mugger, your primary school, how's your church building being used? There are some experts who look about mission in sport. We all get to hear that this afternoon. Our focus is through. We've got a diagram which talks about where we are and where we're seeking to go. If you're watching it on film, you'll be about as clear as anybody else watching it. You've got to do a triangle. This is our vision. The stuff I've talked about is a 5-year vision. It's Darciston. It says where we're going to be and what we're doing now. At the top, we have, we're going to call them 9 fresh expressions. Every deanery is going to have a place where children and young people can be discipled. It's great if we connect with them. How do they become followers of Christ? And most of our sports and mission activity is not good enough. We connect, but we cannot and do not disciple. So this is about going, as Benjamin said, the leisure centres that are failing. Third of the time, run them for the community, sport. Third of the time, put sport and faith together, let it collide. A third of the time, it is a congregation, it's a community and it's worshipping. It's like a rocket now. You can tell I'm a sporty, not arse. This side, we have got vocations. Where does our leadership come from? We're committed to a vocational pathway. If you're 16 and plus, and you love sport, and have a growing interest in a sense of Christ, how can you put your passion together in faith and in sport? It could be a gap year, it could be a workplace, and it could be 2 months off. You could be a PE teacher who loves Christ, a golfer who takes mission into the golf course, or you could be a priest, a vicar, who gets faith and sport and you become a local leader. Here we've got child, Christian, sports, leadership. If that makes sense? So this is about saying, from Key Stage 2 up, how can we, through our schools department, through all our connections, help children see what Christian leadership is, and then beyond that, how do they become our community sports leaders? How do we badge them? I'm from Liverpool, we say, how do you tool them? I mean something else up there. How do we tool them up to be leaders of their community? Why is there a 40-year-old bloke nearly doing sports in the community? It shouldn't be. It should be the 15-year-old. So this is about having a strategy which develops leaders. This is about volunteers. We need 50 volunteers per deanery. Let's do it. And down the bottom, we've got research, evaluation, and models. When this works, this feeds in here. When this works, they become our leaders. What we're doing now, which Rob will do, is working out this. But this affects what we're doing now.
Great, so just to talk practically for the last 2 minutes about that bottom stage of the pyramid. As Rich just said, all of the fresh expressions and the leadership and the opportunity to build up the volunteers, that actually comes from working on the ground with people engaging through sport. Whether that's in a schools context, whether that's in a community context, or whether that's in a church context. Within those models, the whole monitoring and evaluation of actually, are we being effective in sharing the good news? Are we being able to build relationships? Are we being able to speak into social issues? And are people actually having an opportunity to hear and encounter and discover more of who Jesus is? So that evaluating it as a whole process is really, really important for us. Are we actually being effective in what we're trying to do? The research part of that is just trying to identify different key opportunities to actually work in different areas of Gloucestershire for us. Okay, so just to hopefully give you a few kind of different ideas of different models that we're actually trying to do. So if we take the schools context first of all, so I work for SARMS, stands for Putting Sport Alongside Local Ministries, and we're partnered with Diocese of Gloucestershire and Scripture Union to actually help develop some of this sports ministry across Gloucestershire with this vision. So in a schools context, it might be resources for assemblies that local churches can actually take in that have a bit of a sports theme. It might be that we go in and deliver some faith RE lessons, where actually you're exploring parts of the RE curriculum and parts of the key values that a school might have through PE, through that practical kind of gift of sport that we all love here. And the other one is the games. It's a Scripture Union resource, or SARMS have a similar thing called Pulse Games, and that's actually a whole school day where you can explore a key message throughout all of it. Community context, that's how we actually engage with the public space around us. Might be a mugger, might be the park, actually neutral space to connect with people. And then finally, church. Holiday clubs have been a bit of a staple of what churches have done for years. And actually, you know, a lot of them are quite crafty some of the time. We're trying to make them a bit more active. How do you actually cater for some of those children who are kind of more practical learners these days? Non-residential sports camps as well. That's the last one that I'll leave you with.
Right, just dead quick. Whatever you want, you ask and we'll send you any of that. Okay, so the documents, whatever. Go big or go home. Start local, this informs we end up there. Let's go. Lunch. Talk to those two, they're much nicer than this. You can talk to me too. Okay, ask questions. We obviously can't do it now because it's 8 minutes. Yeah? I don't want to get told off.